You're clean, aren't you? Except for your tower. You're a tower junkie, Roland.
Hello and welcome to Tower Junkies, presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. Tower Junkies is a podcast that analyzes, discusses, and above all else celebrates the work of Stephen King with a special focus on his magnum opus, the Dark Tower series. We discuss the themes, characters, and mythology of the series in Palaver episodes, and review the books and comic series in Kef episodes. We also discuss King novels related to the Dark Tower, non-Tower King novels, TV and film adaptations of King's work, and the latest news about potential Dark Tower-related adaptations. You can find more of our work at TowerJunkiesPod.com, and follow us on every level of social media at Tower Junkies Pod. I'm your host, Matt Hurt, and with me today, as always, is Mr. Tiny.
Hello.
I don't know why I called you Mr. Tiny.
I'm being formal.
Yeah, well, you know.
Formal AF.
Yeah. How's it going? How you doing?
Doing all right, yeah.
Good. Same here. What are we doing today?
We are talking about the Pet Sematary film, or the book.
Oh, yeah, you just terrified me a little bit.
Sorry, yeah.
Just like, so it was like saw a Rinko truck coming down the road and didn't have time. Anyway,
oh my god.
Yes, Pet Sematary is Stephen King's 1983 horror novel that he has gone on record stating that of all the novels he has written, Pet Sematary is the one which genuinely scared him the most. So that's interesting. And before we get into kind of digging into the review and everything, let's do some Stephen King check-ins.
Yep.
We were talking before the recording, and I just realized that a good check-in for you. What do you make of the Castle Rock and Dark Tower pilot news and everything? Did you listen to my episode that I released about?
I haven't had a chance to listen to it yet.
Okay.
But I'm excited as hell. I mean, the casting for Castle Rock season 2 is just out of this world. And the characters of Annie Wilkes is going to be a character that's impressive, and that's exciting, frankly. Yeah. Because Misery was my favorite Stephen King novel for a while.
Oh yeah.
When I was younger, I loved that book. I haven't read it in a long time though. And so that's all exciting as hell for Castle Rock. And then we finally have news, just any news about the Dark Tower series, which is going to be on Amazon.
Amazon
right?
Prime.
Amazon Prime. Yeah. I'm really excited for the guy who's playing the Man in Black.
Me too.
Martin Broadcloak. He was I had never seen him in anything. And then he just popped up in Black Klansman last year, and I thought, man, who is this guy? Like, he was really good. He was like menacing and scary, and he's not even American, I guess. He's like Swedish or something.
I think he's Finnish.
Finnish, okay, something like that. But yeah, I was like, he was impressive in that movie. And then, like, as soon as they announced that, I was like, man, I bet he's gonna crush that role.
Totally.
I bet he's gonna crush it. So, and then the kid that got to play Roland, I'm not familiar with him at all. But I'm glad that they're, I mean, I think they're either just pretty much adapting the story of Wizard and Glass.
See, yes.
As far as I would think.
It's a little tricky. First of all,
I mean, Roland's a kid, basically.
Well, yeah.
So it's got to be something like that.
Right. Well, that's the thing. So it's something that, first of all, I'm kind of not irritated with the fandom or anything, because like it just I have such a stick up my ass about like people that are like protective of their fandoms and stuff. Like when the whole Idris Elba as Roland Deschain thing came out, like I was so irritated by it, but like immediately I saw like people saying like, oh well, why are we going with his backstory? That's not like his. That's not the reason that backstory works so well in the books is because we have that's giving context to this character that we followed for 2-3 books at that point. Which I get. I totally get that.
Yeah.
My kind of thing, and we should have like a full episode of this at some point, but my kind of thing is that first of all, my kind of pet theory here is that it's not going to be an adaptation of Wizard and Glass out from the outset.
Okay.
Because they talk about how In the press releases and stuff, I think they said something to the effect of like they're going to talk about his first love and his adventures in Magus and stuff. Also, how he got his guns and how his feud with the Man in Black started. Which all of that, like the feud and everything, the conspiracy of that is the back flashbacks in the Gunslinger.
Right.
So
that's what I meant. Those flashbacks in the Gunslinger and Wizard and Glass, basically.
Yeah, and I would love, like, ideally, first of all, to reiterate from the last episode, it's getting a pilot order. So the way it works is that it's not like it hasn't been picked up to series or anything.
Okay.
So they're going to shoot a pilot. They're going to present it to Amazon, and hopefully they're going to order a series off of it. We've all been hurt before. So.
Yeah.
Also, on that note, it's kind of a bummer because what Amazon used to do up until last year when they discontinued this type of thing, this service that they did, is they had year-round pilot season on Amazon Prime where they would post the pilots that they had on Amazon Prime, and viewers could watch them and vote on which ones they want. And then I don't know if that really counted toward like their decision or anything, but it must have counted somewhat toward it.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, they discontinue this, and then we're getting a fucking Dark Tower pilot that the nature of a pilot is like, okay, if they pass on it, there's a possibility we'll never see this episode of television.
Yeah.
Unless Amazon had their thing that they just discontinued.
Oh, man.
So
I forgot about that.
Yeah. So anyway.
Well, and also the Man in Black was referred to in like the press stuff that I read as Martin Broadcloak.
He was, yeah.
So I don't know that. I mean, which that would put it in the context of the stories in Magus and when he was getting his guns when he was younger and stuff like that. So
which that I'm so eager about, I think, because like I'm so on record as saying like we need like any adaptation to start with the iconic line, obviously. For very specific reasons. And if it doesn't, then by default, the adaptation, at least a small modicum of the adaptation, will not work for me. Having it be a backstory kind of ruins that for me a little bit, but I was thinking about that, and we can do a whole episode about this. I was actually thinking about that because we did, if you remember, in June of 2013 on ObsessiveViewer.com, we did 2 posts. One each of us wrote a post that was how we would adapt the Dark Tower.
Yeah.
Yeah, I reread mine, and like there's some stuff that's like maybe I didn't really understand some of the importance of some of the things.
Yeah.
But I think it would be fun for us down the road to take those pieces that we wrote and then kind of rework them and do like our own, like, this is how we would do it.
I don't think mine's really changed.
Oh, really?
Because I think what's exciting is I think the series belongs on TV. I honestly don't think there should be any movies. I think it should just be straight up I think they should Game of Thrones it. I can
respect that.
I think it could get to that level too of fandom if it was done correctly.
I really hope so.
And I'm fine with it starting where it is. With him as a kid and whatnot. I think it's literally the beginning of the story.
Yeah.
It's just told in different parts throughout the series, and I think it's one thing to have a flashback in a book where like your main character is literally a kid, but like I think if you did that in a show like in the second or third or fourth season or whatever, and you had to like cast, like you have a whole new cast, and then for part of a season or even just like 3-4 episodes, you got your main character's a kid, and it just kind of throws you out. I don't think it would be a bad thing. I think it could work either way, but I don't know. It's hard to not be enthusiastic.
I understand where you're coming from. My kind of counter to that, my dream adaptation, and I'm dipping into a future episode that we'll probably do. My dream adaptation has always been, and will continue to be, a dual narrative television series movie hybrid kind of thing. So the series starts with, the Gunslinger, recounting the Gunslinger. Throughout it, Roland, since that story is Roland going through the desert chasing the Man in Black to get, not to kill him, to get his get guidance to how to get to the tower. So throughout it, like since it's just him like him being in solitude, throughout the season, we would have flashbacks to Gilead before the world moved on. Him winning his guns. Him winning his guns. I'm going backwards, but him winning his guns. Him and Cuthbert finding out about Hax the Cook, uncovering the whole conspiracy and everything. Martin and his mother and everything. Flashbacks throughout the season, a la one of our favorite TV shows, Lost.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, and then season 2 would be like that would all cover the Gunslinger. Season 2 would be a hybrid of the Drawing of the Three with flashbacks recounting Wizard and Glass, and what would kind of trigger the flashbacks in the Drawing of the Three story would be Roland going in and out of consciousness as he's, like in shock, and he's very in poor health throughout the entire story. Mm-hmm. So like you have a built-in mechanic to bring him back and forth in flashbacks and stuff. And then season 3 would draw.
Wow.
Yeah, I know. Season 3 and season 4 would be split of the Wastelands. So half of it would be them drawing Jake, and instead of flashing back to Roland's backstory, it would just flash between Midworld and New York and Jake. Mm. And then maybe the flashbacks would continue in season 4. So,
wow.
That's a preview of a really neurotic episode that we'll do in the future.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Huh.
So
I really like your idea of like the flashbacks.
Right?
I think it's a great idea.
It would be perfect. And just think about it. Like, we would go through several seasons of getting backstory mythology for the world before it moved on and everything. And then, like, imagine, I don't know how it would time out this way, but, like, the whole thing with Wizard and Glass, how it tells the story of how, to an extent, it tells the story of how he first got his taste for getting to the tower and everything.
Yeah.
What if like that backstory lined up with the end of the journey? Like the flashback to him like getting that, and then the flashback to how the story ends. I'm trying not to spoil it, so yeah.
Interesting.
Yep.
Muy interesting.
Yep. So anyway, but we're not here to talk about the Dark Tower. I am excited for the show, though, and hopefully it gets picked up and everything is perfect with it, and we finally get what we want. Which, okay, last thing about that, and then we'll go into our review of Pet Sematary, but I was thinking about this, and I was trying to think of how to tweet it, but I didn't really give much thought to the wording and everything, so I just kind of dropped it. But, like, outside of Spider-Man fans, how often does it happen that people that are fans of a certain property get the opportunity for them to redo an adaptation so soon after the previous one?
Yeah.
So outside of Spider-Man being rebooted countless times,
right?
Like this is kind of, I don't know, it's unique. I like it.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. Yep. Not unlike how it's unique to bury cats and stuff.
Right.
Yeah, Pet Sematary is a novel from 1983. Segue. So we're going to be reviewing Pet Sematary. To be honest, I kind of forgot how we do book review. We do non-spoiler and spoiler.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to do a non-spoiler review of Pet Sematary, followed by a spoiler review. So, first, before we do that, actually, I do have a couple other check-ins real quick. One is that I bought the movie tie-in edition of Pet Sematary in paperback.
Nice.
And two is that I also pre-ordered the Church and Gage Pet Sematary movie Funko Pops.
Nice.
So they will be here in a few weeks.
Cool.
And third one is that if you remember in a previous episode, I talked about the kitchen magnets I got for the Dark Tower. Mm-hmm. I ordered more because it's called Cult City, Cult City, C-U-L-T City. It's on Etsy. They have magnets for all kinds of Stephen King books.
Nice.
So I got The Stand, It, Under the Dome, Pet Sematary. I think that's it this round. Yeah, and it was funny because I have them on my fridge, and just by happenstance, and I feel really weird about this, I put the Pet Sematary one last, but the only place like to make it, even and everything was right above a picture of my nephews,
Oh my god.
who in the picture are very young.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. So those are my quick check-ins. Also,
That's cool.
yeah. So, Pet Sematary. According to the paperback description on the back of the Gallery Books paperback edition, movie tie-in edition, Pet Sematary is about... Here's the plot description. Jesus. When Dr. Lewis Creed takes a new job and moves his family to the idyllic and rural town of Ludlow, Maine, this new beginning seems too good to be true. Yet, despite Ludlow's tranquility, there's an undercurrent of danger that exists here. Those trucks on the road outside the Creed's beautiful old home travel by just a little too quickly for one thing, as is evidenced by the makeshift pet cemetery out back in the nearby woods. There are the warnings to Lewis, both real and from the depths of his nightmares, that he should not venture beyond the borders of this little graveyard. A blood-chilling truth is hidden there. One more terrifying than death itself, and hideously more powerful. An ominous fate befalls anyone who dares tamper with this forbidden place, as Lewis is about to discover for himself. So, Pet Sematary. As a refresher, Tiny, do you happen to know off the top of your head where this landed on your top 19?
I don't remember where I put it, but in my head, I would have it as a top 10er. I mean, it's
Nice.
I dug the crap out of it.
Well, I'm here to tell you that you had it at number 14.
14, really?
Yep.
Okay.
If you want to revise that, feel free.
I feel like when we recorded that episode,
It was right when you had finished it.
right, and I think I didn't necessarily have them in a particular order.
Right. You had
So-
1 through 10 locked, I think.
Okay.
Or I think I've kind of forced you to lock 1 through 10.
Maybe, yeah.
And then 11 through 19 were just kind of in no particular order.
I don't know. Thinking of it it's hard to put it in context with every other novel he's done.
Yeah.
And think like, okay, it's better than this one, this one, this one. It's like I don't know. That's hard to do. But it's a really good book, and it's
Yeah.
I think it's a great way to this book is a great into the Stephen King verse.
Mhm.
Like, I think it'd be like if someone's like, "Hey, I've never read any Stephen King. I want to start reading Stephen King." I think this would be a cool place to start.
Mm-hmm.
I think you can start almost anywhere unless it's a series or whatever.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I just think this is a cool one because it's not that long, and
it's really not.
it's not crazy detailed. There's not a crap ton of characters. It's scary, and it's just plain good.
Yeah.
So
I agree, and I've said this before on the podcast, and I apologize for the repetition, but since we're actually talking about Pet Sematary, and I'll talk more in detail and spoilers, but this is a book that is like, I kind of think of Stephen King like the horror writer Stephen King, like the kind of the writer that the kind of mass public who aren't constant readers view Stephen King as a horror novelist.
yeah,
I see him when I think of Stephen King as a horror writer, I think of two different versions of that. There's, say, The Shining, where it is outwardly scary in terms of supernatural entities. Like, it's just a frightening cabin fever kind of thing that makes you scared because of the setting and the situation and everything.
mm-hmm.
Then you have things like Pet Sematary, where it is far more. It's less of an outward, like, scary, like, oh my god, the truck almost the truck almost hit him. The truck they just got out of the way or something like that, or this thing just happened and it's scary. Oh, I'm scared. But it's more of a I've said this before, but it is a chilling story because it puts you in the position of the main character.
Right.
And it makes you question what, like, as his sanity is brought into question and he descends into what can only be described as a madness, you're put into his position and you can empathize with him and you can understand the logic that he follows, and it makes you, at least it makes me, think in terms of, like, what would I be willing to do or sacrifice if I were in that position?
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, that, and then just the thought of being in his position and being in a situation where you experience incredible loss, like that is just a terrifying kind of mindset to be put into.
Right.
And it's illustrated so beautifully in the writing in this book.
Yeah. It's the concept of it conceptually.
Mm-hmm.
It's just really, engrossing and you're right. It's like it forces you to participate and think about how you would react in the same situation.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you had these tools at your disposal, would you do this? Or even if you wouldn't, you can understand how someone would.
Exactly.
To tiptoe around it.
And let's just go out and say it. It makes you question whether you want to be a doctor for a university.
Right. A big decision.
Yes. No, but it's such an empathetic, it's such an empathy machine for me that it's emotionally draining to read this book. And I've read it 2 or 3 times at this point, and it's 3 times at this point. And it is one of the most emotionally affecting books I've ever read. And I have an interesting kind of comparison or thought exercise that could be its own series of episodes down the road for spoilers. But in non-spoilers, I think this is a spectacular entry in the Stephen King canon. And I had it listed at number 11, I think, when we did our episode, but I have actually since bumped it up to number number 8, but that could go up, I think, because I need to re-listen to The Shining, and see where it lands there. By the way, if you want to see our top 19 King novels, just check the show notes of any episode. I put them into the show notes of every episode we post.
Okay.
Yep. So yeah. We're gonna review the 1989 movie hopefully next week if you're game for that.
Okay.
Have you seen it?
I have. I've seen parts of it. I've never seen it all the way through though, and I was like a kid last time.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's on Amazon Prime and I have it on my Vudu.
Right.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I just haven't had time to watch it because life.
I'm actually kind of not looking forward to it because I remember being kind of disgusted by the meningitis stuff.
Oh yeah.
Like genuinely, I was freaked out and disgusted by it as a kid. Yeah.
Zelda.
It was very, very effective. Yeah, Zelda. It was very effective.
Wow.
So I don't know if it'll hold up. If maybe that was just 9-10-year-old me.
Right.
But yeah, I'm sort of looking forward to it. Sort of not dreading it, but anxious about it, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm not going to force you to watch Pet Sematary 2.
Okay. Thank you.
But I might, if I can finagle it, I might watch it and do a mini episode or maybe tack it on. If I can time it, I can tack on a solo review at the end of our review of it. But anyway, shall we go into spoilers for Pet Sematary?
Sure, that's fine.
All right. So we are going to go into spoilers for Stephen King's novel Pet Sematary. If you have not read it, or you don't know the story or anything, please do not listen to this episode. What are you doing, guys?
Yeah.
Go and read it because, if for some reason you haven't been spoiled on the novel, I implore you to read it so that you can experience it because it's one of the most gripping reads I've had. In my life, I would say. And
you can seriously knock it out. I mean, if you're a hardcore reader, you can knock it out in a day.
Yeah.
A weekend if you're less so. It's not to say it's short or whatever, but it's just...
Yeah, it's... the paperback is less than 400 pages. It's a quick read. But, there are parts where I had to stop reading it.
Yeah.
Just flat out had to stop reading this damn book. But yeah, let's talk about all that in spoilers and kind of go into a more... nuanced discussion about it. So spoilers on for Pet Sematary. So Tiny, I want to go ahead and read from the Wikipedia of
Wiki.
Jesus. From the Wikipedia for it. Kind of the origin of this novel is according to Wikipedia, so Wikipedia. In 1978, King returned to his alma mater, the University of Maine at Orono, to teach for a year as a gesture of gratitude for the education he had received there. During this time, his family rented a house on a busy road in Orrington. The Rudd claimed the lives of a number of pets, and the neighborhood children had created a pet cemetery in a field near the King's home. King's daughter Naomi buried her cat Smucky there after it was hit, and shortly thereafter their son Owen had a close call running toward the Rudd. King wrote the novel based on their experiences, but feeling he had gone too far with the subject matter of the book, he discarded the idea of having it published, particularly since both his wife Tabitha and friend Peter Straub agreed that Pet Sematary was too dark and unenjoyable. However, needing a final book for his contract, King reluctantly submitted it to Doubleday on the advice of his wife. The subsequent success of the book led King to note how both Americans and British readers liked it, even though, quote, it just spirals down into darkness. It seems to be saying that nothing works and nothing is worth it, and I don't really believe that. And then also it's worth noting that Pet Sematary is referenced in the coda section of Song of Susanna, Dark Tower number 6.
Oh, cool.
So yeah,
so it is interesting, despite all that, frankly, negativity that even the author has about it, and how it's super dark, and it's like it should kind of put people off, frankly. Why is it that people love this book so much?
I will go ahead and say that the reason I do, and it could be different for other people, is that, like I said, that the rawness and the way that it just affects me emotionally.
Yeah.
Not only Gage's death. Like, Gage's death, I've said this, I think, on the podcast, I'm sure I have, but I'll reiterate it here since we're actually reviewing it. I read that section for the first time, my hardcover version of it. I was at work. Basically, where I was working was I was a security guard at the second floor entrance of an office building with a camera at my back, and like anyone coming in could see me. I was sitting there reading it, and like the way that it's written in the book and the way that it unfolds is that we get the end. There's a section where Lewis is playing with Gage, his 3-year-old son, and he is playing with a kite with him in the yard. And then like King ends that section with saying that Lewis would think of that day as the last day he was ever happy.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I believe like right after that we're introduced to the next section where it's Lewis at Gage's funeral.
Yeah.
And it's like I was so just hit by that because you're just living in his grief, and it's such a sharp turn, and you are just wallowing with Lewis, and it like King just sits us there for so long, so many pages, and it's all like leading up to his fight with his father-in-law, and how the casket kind of comes and like falls down, and he catches a glimpse of I think Gage's arm, because it was a closed casket because the truck kind of destroyed him.
Right.
So we get all that, and then on top of that, like a few sections later, we get just more wallowing of Lewis's grief, more just living in that grief of him having to bury his 3-year-old son, and then suddenly it's like Lewis woke up. It was all a dream. Gage was able to get Gage, and then it goes through and it just describes like Gage went on to be like an Olympic swimmer or something, and he met like a Catholic girl, and he told them that he was going to convert to Catholicism and that he was going to get married to her and stuff. Like just basically writing out the life of this kid that just died.
The what if,
and then we're just right back in that grief. Like that level of detail. It's kind of cruel on the reader.
Right.
It's really fucking cruel.
Yeah.
And like when I was reading it as a security guard, which, security guards have to be, very, very strong and intimidating.
Right.
It's an office building, guys. It's not.
Wasn't cool.
It wasn't. No, not at all. But I'm sitting there like I am on the verge of openly weeping.
Yeah.
Because A, it's so powerful. B, at the time, my nephew Landon was like 3 years old, and I just by default was picturing him as Gage throughout the entire half of the book.
Yep.
How did that part affect you? Like, how did talk now.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to answer my own question, I think people latch onto this story so easily because it's a what if that almost everybody thinks about at some point in their life. What if you could bring someone back to life? And I think it's just such a relatable. It's like uber relatable because we've all thought about this.
Yeah.
But it's rare that a story does that, I guess, and it's more than just like using reincarnation or whatever in your story. It's a person has the choice to employ it, and it's completely up to him. And it's a father-son relationship, so it's especially potent relationship that you're talking about. And so I think that's why people are kind of morbidly curious about it, and that's why people want to read it, because they're like, well, what does this guy do? I know what I would do, or I have theories about what I would do if I were presented with a situation of being able to bring my dead son back to life.
Right.
And that's I think that's why it's so appealing, and I think that's why I was so interested in it, and I had those thoughts too. I was like, what would I do? I think I know. I think I wouldn't.
Right.
But I don't have kids either. So it's
that's the thing. It's such an unknowable thing.
Right.
Like, because you can't.
It can't happen.
Yeah. I feel like we can sit there and say like, oh, I mean, I wouldn't do that. Like,
Right. It's easy to say.
Yeah. To quote Lost, dead is dead.
Right.
But then also to quote Game of Thrones, what is dead may never die.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then also to quote The Simpsons, dough.
Oh my god.
But no, like you can never. Yeah, I feel like that you can't really ask yourself that question, or you can't really answer that question yourself of whether or not you would do it. But by reading this book and reading what Lewis goes through, like, you are on this journey with him, as fucked up and terrible it is, because throughout the entire like second half of the book, when he's considering this and everything, it's like on one hand you get the classic Kingism where it's like the spirit that inhabits the Micmac burial ground. I can't remember what it's called. Hang on. He's kind of possessed by the Wendigo, which is, according to the Stephen King wiki, the Wendigo was a primal demon who terrorized the Native American Algonquins and other Native American races in both Stephen King's novels Pet Sematary and The Girl Who Loved Tom Gordon.
Oh, okay.
So he's kind of compelled into this. Like, he's not of sound mind, obviously,
right,
because he is, in a desperate, grief-stricken state of mind, and incredibly vulnerable.
Yeah.
So he's being guided by like the Wendigo, but he's also kind of thinking he's more self-aware than just like Jack Torrance being controlled by the Overlook.
Right.
He is he's more self-aware than other like possessed people.
Yeah.
In Stephen King's thing, like even Arnie Cunningham.
It's more like influence over possession.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's something that is just so powerful.
Yeah. And just evil. It's different from possession because that's very blatant and it's in your face, but this is subtle, and it's like it's toying with you as opposed to.
In possession absolves you of
right.
responsibility for it. Like, this is him just being goaded into it. Mm-hmm. So he's still making the decisions.
Right.
And then, to your point about how it's like, a question of like, if you could bring someone back to life, would you? It's not even like the story. It's not like Pet Sematary is like it's not like an easy way of bringing someone back to life.
Right. It's not like you make a wish.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, it is so, one of the most jaw-dropping and uneasy and uniquely terrifying to me portions of this book is that we go step by step with Louis Creed. He orchestrates things so his family is gone for the weekend or whatever, and then he we're with him as he's breaking into the cemetery, as he's almost getting caught in the cemetery, as he is like buying the supplies to dig up his dead son's coffin, and he's transporting it back, and he is taking it to the pet cemetery, or the Micmac burying ground. I don't know if he actually puts it in the pet cemetery or the Micmac. It's the Micmac, because Micmac burying ground is after the pet cemetery. Anyway,
Yeah.
we're through all of these steps, and then it's like that is in place of any outward action or overt terror, anything, because it's just all mental, and it's
all the gritty details.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's true.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah, it's all I've thought about. And it's funny because, like, I'm sitting here and, like, as we're talking it out and stuff, I'm probably gonna listen to this audiobook.
Yeah.
In the lead up to the movie next week.
Right. Well, good segue into the quality of the audiobook.
Yes.
Because that's how we both listened to it. At least, well, you read it in hardback before, or in physical form, but I've only ever listened to the audiobook, which was read by Michael C. Hall of Dexter fame. And he, man, did a great performance.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. I think, it's... As Stephen King is kind of famous for his New Englandy Maine accent that he adds into the books, and over the years, over the years, as you read the books, I didn't have much actual like audio context for what that sounded like. It's all it's phonetic and how you sound it out as you're reading it in your head, and it's like, am I really doing this justice? Am I reading this right or interpreting his letters and words right?
Right.
So to hear it actually spoken, and to for Judd Crandall, his heavy Maine accent was just so perfect to finally have an actual like audio context for what that sounds like.
Absolutely.
Because I don't really know anybody from Maine, and I don't really have much of a context again for what that sounds like, but I can imagine that he pretty much hit it out of the park.
Oh, absolutely. The only real context I have for like that thick of an accent, like the Judd Crandall accent, is my vague memories and clips I've seen of the 1989 movie.
Okay.
And like, it's just amazing how, like, it's amazing how I would sit there and listen to it, and it's so immersive. Like, it is so his story. Like he is capturing that story so well.
Yeah. Well, like if you think of how like John F. Kennedy talked, that was a New England accent, and it was relatively subtle. So think of an extreme version of that, and that's probably how a lot of these small town Maine people talk. And I think Michael C. Hall really, I don't know, I think he just really hit it out of the park. And some of the like the despair of the main character was, I think, I don't know, he used very hushed tones during times, and he just really, I think he embodied it pretty well. His voice embodied that character pretty well too. Yeah. Like you could feel it in his voice, I think. And I think it's a challenge for, a man to read a woman's voice or sort of act out a woman's lines, if you will, as you're reading the book. And I think he did a pretty good job. I feel like the wife was a pretty well-rounded character. It's been a while since I've read. I can't remember the names very well.
Right.
I know Norma and Judd were the neighbors.
Judd, Ellie engaged with kids, Lewis and Rachel.
Lewis and Rachel. Okay, but yeah. Anyways, I think just all praise to Michael C. Hall. Like I don't think anyone could have done a better job.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I can't imagine how it could be better as far as performance.
And I've said this a few times today, even that it makes me happy that John Lithgow isn't going to do the main accent in the new movie. Because I don't remember the actor's name who played Judd Crandall in the original movie, but like that's kind of an iconic kind of maybe not iconic performance, but like that's something that sticks out. Like people remember that performance.
Right.
And Michael C. Hall kind of just embodied that perfectly. That I don't need the thick New England accent in another movie about this source material, as long as it's capturing the heart of the story.
Right. Agreed.
Yeah. There was something I wanted to ask you. A couple things, really. I know it's been a while since you've read Doomakey.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was Doomakey that I was connecting with there. Hang on. I don't know. So Pet Sematary, there's a really great, and I talked to Mike about this a little bit too. There's a really great line, kind of very early in the book. I couldn't really find it, but it's where, like, in the opening pages, Lewis says something to the effect of that he never thought that he would meet a father figure this late in his life, and then he met Judd Crandall.
Yeah.
And that kind of sums up the relationship between Judd and Lewis perfectly and beautifully.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of wondered, because like you can find like these little connections here and there, and these kind of similarities between across all of King's work. And I know it's been a while since you've read Doomakey, but I kind of wonder if like there's something there that like it kind of feels like Doomakey, the relationship between Edgar Fremantle and Wireman kind of feels like he was trying that kind of relationship, friendship thing that he accomplished in Pet Sematary. Do you remember Doomakey enough for that?
Not that well. I remember, but I remember who I pictured.
I remember who you pictured too, but go ahead.
I think I pictured Bryan Cranston as the main guy.
Oh, I don't remember that, but that fits really well.
Okay, and then I think I pictured John Goodman as Wireman.
Oh, no, you pictured Gandolfini.
James Gandolfini, because I think when I read it, he had just passed away. Or I was watching.
You may have been watching
The Sopranos.
Because I don't think he passed away until after that.
Okay, yeah, you're probably right. Yeah. But yeah, James Gandolfini, that's right.
Yeah. When I was reading it, and I was listening to the audiobook, so Edgar Fremantle, I pictured John Slattery, because he reads the audiobook.
Oh, okay.
And then I pictured for Wireman, and I think it's because his name is Wireman. But I pictured, I can't remember his name. Wow, the actor from The Wire, who plays Bunk Moreland.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
I can't think of his name either.
Yeah. And he's going to be a listener to the podcast. Hang on.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So, I don't know. Maybe I'll bring that up because I am planning on reviewing Doomakey.
Gotcha.
Oh, man. Wendell Pierce is his name.
Wendell Pierce.
So, maybe I'll talk more about that. Maybe see, maybe no.
Gotcha. Yeah, that was one of my that budding neighborly relationship was I appreciated that too, because I have, being like a sort of new homeowner. We've had our house for about 2 years now. It's cool having neighbors that are cool that like you like. The kind of the whole dynamic of like Tim Taylor and Wilson coming over to the fence and having a conversation, like that's genuinely a pretty fulfilling thing, I guess. And I have some nice neighbors, so
nice.
we actually I've had several moments where you come up to the fence and you have a conversation like that. So
that's nice.
It felt that's kind of how that relationship started, and then obviously it evolved in the book to like more like a father figure type thing. Yeah. But it was just incredibly touching. I mean, just the character of Judd Crandall in general is just a really well-rounded character, and very it's always fun to have like a wise, sage-like character in any book, really.
Yeah.
The voice of reason,
Absolutely. And he has such kind intentions. Like he introduces Lewis to the Pet Sematary and everything, and he helps him bring church back. And it's like it's something that he does out of kindness to help to help Ellie, like, not, go crazy, like not have a traumatic experience, like coming home to her dead cat.
Right.
And it's so pure, that reasoning for that, and then it just escalates into something that it becomes an irredeemable thing that he does. Yeah. And an irrevocable thing. First of all, let's talk about church.
Yeah.
So this trigger warning for people, this does have violence against cats. So yeah, it's brutal. It's brutal, guys.
It is.
But in a more serious thing, Pizza's never allowed outside. The descriptions of church, like after he is resurrected and everything,
Right.
it's so grotesque.
Yeah.
And it's like just the way that he describes like how it's so vivid, the way that King writes about church effectively not having a soul anymore and just being this lifeless blob, and how Lewis just kind of has to live with that.
Yeah.
And he's isolated with the church thing for a long time before Rachel and Ellie even come home because they were away for like Thanksgiving. It's just the descriptions are just wonderful.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I love it.
Yeah. But to your previous point really quickly, I don't know if I don't think this was implied in the writing at all, or it was a theme that Stephen King was going for, but I kind of feel like part of the reasoning for Judd introducing Lewis and the family to what the Pet Sematary is and the fact, the magic there or whatever you want to call evil. I think part of his reasoning for it is he feels like a bit of a responsibility because, it's one of those things where it's like, well, he's going to find out about it anyways. Someone's going to tell him about it, or he's going to have some weird experience or something. So I need to be the responsible local guy here, the kind of the wise elder here, and, guide him into this concept or this reality of where it is that we live. And because he's like I said, he's going to find out about it eventually, and I need to sort of prepare him for it and introduce it to him in the right way, so that he's not tempted to abuse it or whatever, which obviously doesn't work out, but I don't know, that's sort of what I read into it, because I was like, Judd understands that dead is better. Right. Sometimes dead is better, but at the same time, why? So it's like some people might be thinking, why would you even tell him about the Pet Sematary or the magic powers that it has? Why would you even do that? But I think that's why he did it.
See, and I think that's part of it. I think that's definitely a part of it, but I think some bigger reasoning of it is specifically to protect Ellie.
Yeah, I think you're right too. Okay, yeah, I agree with that. I think that was maybe another aspect to it.
Yeah. Or
something that I picked up, I guess.
And I love the way that the story kind of evolves from this teaching exercise, there's this undercurrent throughout the whole story where Rachel and Lewis are trying to figure out how to teach Ellie about death. She's learning about death. And Rachel doesn't want to because she has a traumatic experience in her past with her sister and everything. So it's this uncomfortable conflict between Lewis and his wife that's just really it's really strong throughout the entire as an undercurrent throughout the entire story. And then you have I was just flipping through the pages to make sure her name is Rachel. It is. And then you also have the added fact of her parents don't like Lewis, and it's this resentment throughout. There are so many layers to this book and this story, and it's one of the reasons why I love King's writing, is that it's just so vivid with the human dynamics at play, and the way that it's the best. It's one of the best examples of ordinary people reacting to extraordinary things and having powerful emotional reactions to it, which is the biggest selling point for Stephen King's writing for me.
Yeah,
is that's the strongest thing that he does. Yeah.
Well, to sort of not necessarily maybe start wrapping up a little bit, but I think this is one of my favorite endings he's ever written.
Yeah, I was just going to bring up the ending.
Yeah, the visual of it
my God.
was just really strong for me. I could see it. I was like, man, if I made this movie, I know exactly how I would do this, and just literally the last, I think it's the last line where she leans in and says, "Hello, darling."
Yes.
I was like, ooh, I literally got a chill.
It is one of the most incredible closing lines of a King novel.
Right, absolutely.
And it's just in that, I think that in the way that it ends with, Judd's dead, and like Rachel's dead, and Lewis is crazy. Like he's off the deep end. He is completely taken into this madness that it has consumed him.
Will not recover, basically.
Exactly. To the fact that he takes his wife and buries her so that he does not lose her again. And then all of that, like the ending where she just says "darling" and then the end. It's like, it shows. I think that's where the despair of the entire story lies. Is that there's no resolution to that grief and everything, and there's no resolution to the madness or anything. It's just, this is a story about a man who experiences great loss and then tries to heal that loss through horrific means, and then fails, and then tries it again, and then that's it.
Yeah.
Like, it's something that, like, Lewis doesn't learn from his experience the way that, anyone else really would.
Yeah.
And I also think that that's kind of a powerful statement about just humanity and like what, like the power of connection to other people and how we tether ourselves to other people, I think.
Well, and kind of like the seduction or corruption of a power that strong.
Yes.
I don't know if seductive is the right word. I think initially it's seductive, but then the second time, when he brings his wife back, it's just pure corruption. He's like, well, this is the only answer now.
Yeah.
To this grief is to try this, and he tries it. I think I would use the word tragic. It's tragic.
Absolutely.
How he tries to justify it to himself to bring his wife back. And I was like, no, it's not going to work.
Right.
And it's like, I think he knows.
Yeah.
But it's like an addict justifying, like, oh, I can quit whenever I want.
Exactly.
It's the same thing. And I was like, man, that's just fucked up, frankly.
It's so disturbing and just haunting.
Yeah.
And the last thing I want to kind of bring up in this discussion is something that I think that we could make an entire episode series about down the road, especially as we read more of King's work. On my list, I have Pet Sematary at number 8. At number 7, I have The Shining.
Okay.
Now, while I was listening to Pet Sematary this most recent time, I was just really engaged with how, no pun intended, I was really taken with the corruption and how Lewis just slowly descends into madness. And that made me think of The Shining and how Jack Torrance is, like, that book is his descent into madness.
Yeah.
And I feel like those are two interesting parallels, because where Lewis is, his madness grows out of a need to keep his family together and bring back what he's lost. Jack Torrance's madness is more of a consumption of his soul by the hotel to get him to murder and turn against his entire family. And it's an interesting parallel and juxtaposition there. And kind of the question I want to raise about that is, do you think I know it's been a while since you've read The Shining, but do you think it's... Where do you think it's stronger written, like that descent into madness?
Ooh.
Jack Torrance or Lewis Creed?
It's been literally more than half my life since I've read The Shining.
Jesus.
Because I was 13. I think I'm going to give the edge to The Shining.
Okay.
Because strictly for detail.
Okay.
Because The Shining is 600 pages. Substantially longer.
Probably
substantially.
5,
is it? Okay.
I think.
Well, I feel like it's substantially longer than Pet Sematary, and I feel like the descent, if you will, is gradual, and I'm not. That doesn't mean that what happens to Lewis in Pet Sematary is lesser or it's not as good. It just means it's different, and I'd give the edge to The Shining because the gradual nature of it provides more detail and eases you into it a little more.
That's a good point.
And really just the detail. That's what I remember about The Shining is the detail, which is sort of a characteristic of Stephen King's writing in general.
Absolutely.
But that was when I was still early to his work, so that's what I remember about that book. But I think that sets it apart, and I think both both descents into madness are rooted in a little bit rooted in selfishness as well. I think they're both slightly selfish characters.
Yeah.
Which we all are guilty of that from time to time. And so I think that's what makes it relatable. But I think if you want to say which one is scarier, I think Pet Sematary is scarier, frankly. Because I feel like while there are supernatural elements at work in The Shining, obviously, I feel like that can happen. It can just be straight up cabin fever that can make people go nuts and kill. It's happened, you know,
Right.
That happens.
I mean, we've been in here for like an hour, and
Right.
I'm like, you know.
Yeah, I'm thumbing the knife in my pocket right now.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Okay,
I don't even have a knife.
Okay, good. I have a shot.
You don't need a knife when you don't need a knife when you got these hands. I don't know why.
I need a knife, Rob.
See, I'd give the slight edge to The Shining. Yeah,
Interesting.
But I don't know. What do you think?
I'm gonna actually go with Pet Sematary.
Okay.
Just because I think this is a good demonstration of what I meant by the kind of the dividing nature of Stephen King as a horror writer. So you have the outright terrifying, shining, you know. It's interesting because, like, kind of the big money shots of both of those books are The Shining is Jack going into room 217, and then in Pet Sematary it's Gage's funeral.
Yeah.
So you have this emotional kind of horror from Pet Sematary, but in The Shining you have this just conventional, like, scary horror that's like demons and monsters and stuff. And I think that's why I kind of give the edge to Pet Sematary, because Pet Sematary is more emotionally driven than anything.
Yeah. That's fair. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that his descent, I do agree 100% that The Shining and Jack Torrance's kind of descent throughout The Shining is more gradual, because that's what The Shining is.
Right.
And whereas Pet Sematary, we have like a whole half of the book where it's him, like, fixing kids and being haunted by a student that died on his first day. I can't remember the student's name. Name.
I can't remember either.
Yeah, but and then we have, like, you know, he's burying a cat and everything.
Yeah.
And then it's not until, like, right around the exact halfway point of the book that we actually get, like, his, like, that's when he's, like, thinking, like, oh, I need to dig up my son and I need to bury him and then I need to bring him back.
Right.
So yeah, so I totally understand and appreciate the gradual nature of The Shining's pacing and everything, but I think in terms of just the emotional terror at play in Pet Sematary, I think that the descent into madness of Louis Creed is a lot more emotionally affecting on me than Jack Torrance's. And I think that once I re-listen to The Shining fairly soon, I'm going to probably swap the Pet Sematary and The Shining, so The Shining will be number 8 and Pet Sematary will be number 7, if not higher.
Okay.
By the way, that student that Louis had the traumatic experience with during his first day of classes was Victor Pascal.
Victor Pascal.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you raise a good point too, because it's I think in The Shining, that madness would happen to. It's happened before, and it happens to just about everybody. Like, it's an inevitability because of the haunted hotel or whatever.
Exactly.
Whereas, I mean, Lewis made decisions, and
Right.
he was influenced, but he made those decisions, and it's a different dynamic for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And there's kind of a romanticism to Jack's possession, I guess, in The Shining. It's more of like he's just being kind of reeled into the Overlook Hotel.
Right.
And like it's like one of my favorite parts of The Shining is he's just poring over old journals and notes and stuff, and he's learning about the history of the Overlook.
Yeah.
And everything, like, it's possessing him that way. Whereas Lewis it's completely out of a familial obligation and the pain that is within him to correct that pain and
Right.
make him not be the shell of a man that he is after his son's dead.
Right.
So yeah. Well, this was a downer conversation, Tiny.
It was a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am so excited for this movie.
Are you? Yeah. I'm looking
so
forward to it.
pumped. Yeah, and like we're both big fans of Jason Clarke.
Yeah.
And like I'm so excited to see him in like that lead role, because he's always kind of been just kind of a character guy.
Yeah, kind of a leading man character actor.
Exactly.
Which doesn't make any sense, but
he's the leading man in movies that you kind of remember seeing.
Right. Yeah, he's a leading man. That guy.
Exactly.
That one guy from that one movie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He was the human in a Planet of the Apes movie.
Yeah.
But and judging from the trailers, I think that I have very high hopes for his performance.
Yeah, me too.
There are parts in the trailers that I just feel like the cadence he uses and the kind of tone that he employs is just, I think it's going to really work well.
Yeah. And John Lithgow is always a treat too.
Oh, absolutely.
So, yeah.
And I say this as almost as a joke because I'm a cat person and everything, but honestly, it looks like the cats that they used for the movie. Because obviously they use multiple cats for church. Just kind of a peek behind the curtain to Hollywood. But it looks like they got some good stuff from the cats.
Yeah.
Like there's a gif of Church hissing very forcefully that I've been using a lot in private conversations.
Yeah.
It's great. So I'm excited for that, and it's also worth noting, I believe, that I think they used like 8 different cats.
Oh wow!
Church. I think 8, but all of them got adopted.
Oh.
Before the end of filming, I guess.
Filming. That's nice.
So yeah, I want to say adopted by like the crew.
Oh, okay.
Maybe some of the handlers, but anyway,
gotcha.
Which are part of the crew. So
yeah.
Any parting thoughts on Pet Sematary?
I don't think so. I think we fleshed it out pretty good.
I think so too.
Great book.
It's astounding. It really is.
And highly recommend the audiobook too. Obviously.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's funny because I've been re-listening to King audiobooks while I'm working the last like month or so, and I've been kind of going through my favorites, like the greatest hits, and so I have done like 11/22/63. Today I finished The Stand, and then like I just started Misery, and it's just so. I love Stephen King.
Yeah, he's one of a kind.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So next up on the podcast, we're gonna do Pet Sematary the movie, 1989.
Yep.
And maybe a brief Pet Sematary 2. Brief, but
I wouldn't commit to that one.
I know. Yeah. We'll see.
Yeah.
Sorry. If I do that, I don't know. In terms of the amount of time on it, I don't know how furlong it will go. Edward Furlong is in Pet Sematary.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yep. So definitely Pet Sematary 1989 next week, and then Pet Sematary in 2019.
Yep.
It's getting a lot of buzz. Super excited. Let us know what you thought of Pet Sematary, the novel, the movie, the Funko Pops, everything. And, of course, if you like what you hear, you can always donate to us at towerjunkiespod.com/donate or obsessiveviewer.com/donate. And become a patron at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. We regularly post Patreon-specific recordings that are exclusive for Patreon supporters. So all you got to do is just pledge $1 and you'll get access to that RSS feed, and you'll get to hear us talk about whatever we talked about tonight. I don't remember.
Yeah.
It'll be a surprise.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Jordan Peele. We talked a lot about Jordan Peele.
We did, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that'll do it for this episode of Tower Junkies. Thank you guys so much for listening. Long days and pleasant nights.
And may you have twice the number.
All right.
Cool.
Tower Junkies is edited and produced by Matt Hurt and presented by ObsessiveViewer.com. For a full archive of our episodes, go to TowerJunkiesPod.com/archive. You can also like our Facebook page at Facebook.com/TowerJunkiesPod and follow us on Twitter at TowerJunkiesPod. If you enjoy the show, please take a couple minutes to leave us a rating and a quick review on Apple Podcasts. This is the easiest way to support what we do, and all it costs is just a little bit of your time. If you'd like to donate to the podcast, you can make a PayPal donation at towerjunkiespod.com/donate, or support us on Patreon for recurring donations and access to commentary tracks and B-roll audio recorded exclusively for patrons at patreon.com/obsessiveviewer. Every donation goes toward paying the fees to keep the podcast running and is greatly appreciated. For official Obsessive Viewer merch, including shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more, visit our TeePublic store. You can find a link to the store in the show notes of this episode and at obsessiveviewer.com/donate. Or you can simply search for Obsessive Viewer at teepublic.com. For information about our annual live event showcasing short horror films from local filmmakers, check out shocktoberinirvington.com. And for an archive of all our events, as well as news about potential future events, head over to obsessiveviewer.com/live. For more podcast content, you can find our flagship movie and TV review and discussion show, The Obsessive Viewer Podcast, at obsessiveviewer.com and on Twitter at obsessiveviewer. You can also find Anthology, Matt's solo podcast covering The Twilight Zone, and other classic and contemporary science fiction anthology TV shows at anthologypod.com and OV Anthology Pod on Twitter. And finally, check out The Secular Perspective, Tiny's side project podcast, which tackles current events and life's big questions from the perspective of secular hosts Chad and Amanda at thesecularperspective.com. Music for the podcast is provided with permission from Fingers T on YouTube. Additional bumper music is provided courtesy of As Good As It Gets, which can be found at facebook.com/asgoodasitgetsband. Thank you so much for listening. Long days and pleasant nights.
Kitty!